Welcome to Better Relationships, Better Life, where relationships expert Judy K. Herman and her guests share insights that can help you move through conflicts in your 9-to-5 jobs and your 24/7 lives. Crack the clarity code and create deeper connections beyond the messiness of relationships. Here's your host, Judy K. Herman.
3 reasons to pause. Sanity for leaders and their families. Tim and Adele Richardson have been a couple since 1987, and Tim is a nationally recognized leadership, sales, and service speaker who's been entertaining and engaging audiences for over 30 years. Adele is a stay-at-home mom who homeschooled their 6 children, and they recently became first-time grandparents and someday hope to lead couples retreats. Let's listen in as we talk about the 3 reasons to pause. Sanity for leaders and their families. I'm so glad, Adele and Tim, that you are my podcast guests today. And I want folks to get to know you. I met both of you, I don't know, about a month or so ago at the Georgia National Speaker Association chapter meeting. And Tim, you've been a professional speaker for many years. I was very blown away by the message that you gave us all. And then just talking with you too, I really wanted to have you on my show because there's so many folks that need to hear your message about the pause, and especially about raising 6 kids, homeschooling them. You've got a whole life ahead to share with us, but maybe you can give us the Reader's Digest version of your story, how you began and where you are right now.
I'm going to let my beautiful wife start with that question.
Well, we have been together 35 years. 5 of those were before marriage. We've been married for 30 years. We met through a mutual friend. And then I ended up asking him out on our first date. And we spent the entire day together. Started very early in the morning with watching him do a triathlon. And then it ended up with a Hawaiian dance for my college sorority. And that's all she wrote. I mean, we've been together since that day, April 18th, 1987.
What I really like to tune into when couples tell me about their history, when one is sharing their version of the story, I like to see what the look is on the other one's face to see. And I see that smile. So that's really cool, Tim. And share your version if there's any more to share about that.
Well, he loves the idea that I'm the one who asked him out, right?
I love it. And what I even love more about it, it was her mother's idea.
Yes.
I had just bought a new Jeep and I was at a wedding with a sorority sister of hers. And for some reason, I said, let's go by Adele's. And so we, again, we had met, we'd known each other for 3 years, but there was no interest on either party. And so we drove by her house. It was about 9 or 9:30 at night on a Saturday night. What college student is even home on a Saturday night?
Me.
And she was home and her parents were there. And so we left and she was talking to her mom and said, some point, I need a date for my last sorority party because she had a boyfriend. He was out of town. And so she said, why don't you ask that Tim guy? He seems like a nice guy or something to that effect. So I fooled my mother-in-law from the get-go and I'm still fooling her today.
And we wouldn't even call it an arranged marriage, right?
No. And it happened to be April 18th, which is my favorite day of the year. My grandmother, who shaped my entrepreneurism and my love of serving greatly, was born on April 18th, on the day of the great San Francisco earthquake. And it also happens to be the day that Paul Revere rode through the streets of Concord yelling those famous words, "The British are coming." And Paul Revere is my favorite U.S. historical figure. So all of those reasons, April 18th is a really, really special day. My favorite day of the year.
That's amazing. I learned something, Tim, about all of that. Did you know that ahead of time, Adele, that this was all serendipity because of April the 18th?
No, I certainly didn't know about his grandmother, on that day, nor Paul Revere. I might have learned about Paul Revere years ago, but no, but it is a special day. And we celebrate it every year. We
Oh,
go out
sweet.
Yeah.
And so you
Sweet.
asked this question, Judy, but one of the things that I would say to any couples listening is you find dates, not just your wedding anniversary, but other dates that are significant in your relationship and marriage, and you honor those because there's things we look forward to every year to do something fun. And a couple years ago, Adele surprised me. I guess it was pandemic time. And she set up our front porch really cute on April 18th with a little tablecloth and wine and left me a little note. And, you know, one of the things that I think we value in our relationship, and I tell any particular entrepreneurial couple, is to never lose that desire to date one another. And that's part of our marriage and our relationship is to surprise each other, even with little things like that. It means a lot to me, and I think the things I do mean a lot to her as well.
That I appreciate you sharing that. And I've had previous podcast guests talk about what does make long-term marriages, you know, vibrant and authentic. And that's beautiful, because celebrating like that, Tim and Adele, mental health wise is really good for you as well. So I love it that you do that. But that was actually one of the things that I was impressed with you two about. Here you are, Adele, sitting there, seeing your husband on stage, speak to all of us, eager, developing speakers. And I just loved the energy that the two of you brought at that, you know, at that event. So then finding out that you had homeschooled, or you raised, or you birthed and raised and homeschooled six kids. And that now I'm talking to the two of you and you're still smiling and you celebrate even those moments. Like, how does that even happen?
We're good actors.
Yeah. Well, now you got six kids. What are their ages?
They range from 26 to 13.
Okay.
We've got boys and then 4 girls in the middle.
Okay, gotcha. So how many are actually at home still?
2 now, only 2. This is a whole new world for us.
We're almost there. The finish line is in sight.
Yeah. So 4 are out and thriving, and 2 are in and hopefully thriving. We think they're thriving, and we're still alive to tell it. So.
Well, how did you maintain your, I will say, coupleship, so to speak? How did you maintain that while, Tim, you're going out on the road speaking, and Adele, you're a stay-at-home mom? And how did you, well, I mean, you did share one thing about celebrating, but how did you maintain that sense of couplehood or coupleship that you have?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to add that whenever he travels, he does a great job of reaching in every day, reaching back home every day. And he not only wants to talk to me, but he wants to talk to the kids. And so he'll call at a time when they're able to come to the phone. So that has helped tremendously with his travel schedule.
That's great.
I would add too that early on, even before we had kids, but particularly when we had kids, because I know how hard it is when one person's home and taking care of everything, that we decided on a reasonable number of nights that I could be gone per month. And so we did that. And then as the kids got older, have taken them all except our youngest yet on a daddy business trip. So that takes one person out of the equation, but it also gives them a sense to be and to see what I do, and to have an opportunity to go somewhere fun. And I'm fortunate that I'm able to stay oftentimes at some nice hotels, and so the kids get to see what goes on. And so that's been really, really fun for them and for me to take them on trips. And audiences love it when they see a young preteen or early teen kid sitting there. And particularly my oldest was very computer savvy, and he would set up my computer for me, and he's traveled extensively with me all over North America. So
wow, that's exciting.
And it's nice for the kids to see what daddy does. Otherwise they really, how often do children not even know what their fathers do? So that was a good thing.
I would say that's probably a very good field trip, homeschool experiences that you've given your kids over the years.
Yep. Field trip.
That shouldn't be reserved for homeschool families anyway. Any of your couples listening, if you're an entrepreneurial couple, you need to do your kids a big favor and let them into your world and let them see what you do and help them understand. There's bring your daughter to work day, bring your son to work day, whatever those days are, acknowledge those and have your kids be a part of that so they can see what you do and be open about the conversations. I mean, we're open when when things we have to tighten up a little bit, we're open with our family about that. And I think that's a very cool thing. And, I grew up with an extremely entrepreneurial grandfather. And so part of the reason I am doing what I'm doing is because of the role models that my grandparents displayed for me in both of their volunteer work, in my grandmother's case, and my grandfather's case, a lifelong serial entrepreneur.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. That's really exciting. So yeah, I want to kind of shift into your theme, at least this stage in your life, Tim and Adele. Tim, you speak a lot on taking the pause. I'd like to know the story behind how that theme is important and passionate for you right now. Maybe you can even define, what is the pause? I mean, as entrepreneurs and busy business people and just doing the daily grind of life, raising kids. Yeah, we go, and we don't think we can pause. But share with us about that.
So I heard two questions. I heard one, defining what the pause is, and the second question, how did it all start? And I'm going to start with that question. So as probably most people listening or watching this are going to remember, we had quite a long pause in our country from early 2000 to really into part of this year. And so for almost 2 years, I did no work, zero, no speaking engagements, no income whatsoever. And about halfway through that time period, I got involved in a mastermind group, and I actually participated in, for a short period, 3 different Zoom calls weekly. And at the end of one of the calls, I hung up the phone and I thought to myself, it's no wonder we have a problem getting speaking engagements. Everybody on this call, and there were probably 15 or so people on that particular call, does exactly the same thing. If you were to draw a circle around leadership, which it happened to be the topic, everybody touched on that in some way, shape, or form. And so these 3 words popped into my brain, and it only could have been from God. That's the only thing I can fear, because I'd never thought them before. And the words were creating sane workplaces. And so what I realized, for people who were working regularly, they were working longer and longer hours. The distance between home life and work life was totally gone, because many people, as you know, were working at home. And what I heard is people were working till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, because they go have dinner with their family, then they go right back into their spare bedroom or the dining room table or wherever their office was and continue working.
Yeah.
And so what I realized, I had more of a pause than I wanted. And that, coupled with the people who were not having a pause at all, made me realize how important it is, because it's in that pause, in that white space, in that time frame, that some of the best and most creative ideas come. And if you and I are working without having time to stop, take a breath, literally take a breath, look around, listen, check in with people we care about, people that we love, then we're not going to have new ideas. So that's where it all came about. And I think I've defined it in that moment as well. It's a pause can be something as simple as just stopping for a moment and saying, what's next?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll oftentimes, if I have a problem I'm trying to solve or looking for a creative spark, I'll just get up and walk around, go out. And we live near some trails and woods. I'll go walk on the trail in the woods. I'll take the dog for a walk. I'll play the piano. I'll play the piano, anything that can break the cycle of thinking temporarily, to give yourself and your brain an opportunity to have an extended or maybe even a short break. So that's how I would define pause.
I love that definition and hearing that too. And you're absolutely right. We have all, as a global community, have had to take that pause the last 2 years during the pandemic. And it's interesting how I know of a lot of people who wouldn't go back to the way it was. It's kind of like you squeeze a tube of toothpaste out, and you realize, you're slowing down long enough to be living your life and taking those pauses. And I think that's so very important. I resonate with that on a lot of levels. And also, Tim, it's interesting, Tim and Adele, even as we have this conversation, to take time for a pause, like pause for a moment. I learned how to do that too. I mean, I didn't always used to do that in my counseling, but early on, I would think I'd have to fill up space when really I needed to allow my client to really think. I'm thinking you have to do that as a speaker as well.
Very important. But it's, you know, it's important in anything that you do, particularly if it's a communication of any kind. You know, I believe it was Mark Twain who said, nothing is ever as effective as a rightly timed pause. You think about anything that you do in life, it's certainly important for communicators, but it's important for everybody to pause before you say something. We would save so much just to stop for a moment and pause and think, all right, how is this going to be received by the other person? Am I being kind in the way I'm delivering news that I might need to deliver? Am I angry when I say that, and so forth? So just taking a breath before you do something or say something big and think about the outcome. What's the desired outcome? Who's going to be impacted by this? How is this message going to be heard by them? And we all know people hear very, very different things. So, and then when you've said it, you pause to give the other person an opportunity to respond, which is a very, very, very difficult thing to do, particularly for those of us who are communicators. Say it and shut up.
Well, let me ask you, Adele, how has Tim's awareness and this pause and what he speaks on, how has that changed your relationship over the last 2 or 3 years?
I think there is a calmness. We're able to enjoy some pauses together, which has been nice. Lots of walks together. It's not as go, go, go as it used to be. So it's been a positive thing, a real positive thing.
And I think she would agree. I fight the go, go, go nature. Having a maternal grandmother and a paternal grandfather who were just go, 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 go all the time. Both of them. Those were my role models. And people want to know, why can't you sit still? I just thought it was normal. I thought that's how people live their lives, and it's not, good. And one of the biggest things Adele has taught me is just, it's okay to be still. I remember early in our relationship going to events or dinner or over at her parents' house, and they would literally sit around for hours and do nothing. And
That's
like,
okay.
I'm like, let's go windsurfing.
It's okay.
It's okay. But let's go windsurfing. Let's go to the beach. Let's go for a run. I wanted to be doing, and I was busy thinking about doing, and they were busy thinking about being. And I think that's an important distinction to have when you think about a pause. You know, if you want to do, but you also want to be, and you're more present when you pause.
Absolutely. What you two are describing is a very common dynamic, honestly, with the couples that I've seen over the years. Is one wants to be a homebody and the other is very sociable, go, go, go. So, so you have influenced each other. You've influenced each other. Yeah. That's great. And tell me how that's affected your parenting as well. Like how have your kids, do your kids like kind of fall in one of those two categories, go or laid back?
I think so.
Yeah, we've got a mixture. Our oldest is kind of, I think, tooled like a lot like me, and he would be benefit from hearing some of this message as well. And I think in the big thing in terms of parenting is, for me, because I have a tendency, something happens, I want to address it right then and there. Sometimes, particularly if they do something that makes me angry, that's not a good time. And it's never a good time when you're angry to discipline or to have a conversation with your spouse. And so it's one of the things that I try to do more of, and maybe ask a few questions and trying to understand before rolling out the parental punishment or parental death statement.
That's great. Any more to add to that, Adele? This must be a breath of fresh air for you, for your husband to be pausing these days.
It is nice, but we really, I think about our children, you know, the 6 children, and how there definitely are some, I guess more of the girls are introverted like I am, that really just kind of just love being home and just get their energy from that and just being in a home space. And then we've got, others that can't get enough of go. So we've got a nice variety, I think. And I think they probably learn from both of us and maybe grab what they want to from each of us, and can kind of change their outlook a little bit to push themselves a little
Think
bit.
how boring life would be if the two of you were too much alike, So you got this yin and yang,
But we have so much fun.
Yeah. We'd be exhausted.
I'm curious, can you share maybe a place of transition that you've gone through, and maybe in reference to the pause as well, maybe when you didn't pause and you missed something, or you went through a real challenge either in your marriage or in parenting. I like to just, let people know we're all real. We go through our stuff and we don't automatically get to this place of, oh, I need to take a pause, right? So, yeah.
Well, so vulnerability here, this is our 30th year anniversary, and both during this anniversary and our 25th anniversary were particularly difficult times for us. Times when you should be celebrating a milestone. Because of my personality, go, do, and because I like to get up early and I like to accomplish, I like to get things done, that can affect a person who's also ADHD, which I am, their sleep. And so my sleep patterns have not been regular. It's almost like the Olympics. About every 4 to 5 years, I have difficulty sleeping, and I wake up thinking, and I get way too much on my plate. And then when I do, I become a little more irritable and not as pause oriented, not as slow. In fact, everything speeds up. One would think when you're tired and exhausted, as my body and mind were, you would slow down, but the opposite happens, and I speed up and everything becomes very, very, very fast. And not only was I wearing myself out, but I was wearing Adele out, certainly, and some of our kids as well. And so, being able to take a step back from that, and now that we're kind of through that time, to look back on it and to realize what warning signs exist. And I would say that to any couple, particularly an entrepreneurial couple that works together, you've got to have some guidelines for the relationship. You've got to have some warning signs. It's like, that warning sign on your dashboard comes on alerting you that there's something wrong. You need oil. Your tires are not. And it'd be great if I had a warning sign, visibly on my body. But, Adele in part is that warning sign. And I think, she would check in with me. How are you doing? Did you sleep okay last night? And so I think if we can be that for one another, particularly if you're working together, you've got to have those boundaries and those parameters to be able to say, you know what, it's time to stop. We need to end for the day, and we need to go out, or we need to have a quiet dinner together, or go for a walk and not talk about work. And so I think in particular, that's where Adele is really, really good for me, in that she sees what it could be if we don't have those pauses, those breaks, those boundaries. But again, I think that's important for any couple.
Absolutely. Actually, that really goes back to what I've written in my book, that our relationships are like mirrors to you. Like, we have these blind spots, and we need to have that kind of partnership and level of trust so that you can be willing to be seen, or be willing to know that you've got blind spots, that your spouse sees something in you that you can't see in yourself. So you really spoke right to that, Tim. And another thing, I did have Melissa Orlov on my program. Actually, she's episode 1. She spoke on ADHD and marriage. So it's really cool. I so appreciate you sharing that, and that can be managed, that can be workable, and having that kind of partnership in your marriage is so important. So that's great. Let's talk about at least 3 reasons to pause, because the name I call this episode 3 Reasons to Pause: Sanity for Leaders and Their Families. I'm thinking if you don't pause, you're going to have some insane times. And yeah, so what would be those three? I know there's probably many more than three, but when you came to speak to our chapter, I was doing a whole bunch of writing and I'm thinking, oh, this is so good. But anyway, maybe we can boil them down to three for our listeners.
So I'm going to give you two groups of three. The first is when to pause. And as you think about what you do in your career, the thing that I focus on is, how do I pause before I do this big thing? So we'll take speaking, for example. So I pause to write content and to tailor the message specifically for that audience. I pause to make sure I dot all the I's and cross all the T's in the engagement. Or if I'm using AV, what AV? Am I having a backup plan? Do I know my audience? So I remember the names of people that I can use in the audience in appropriate ways to engage them in the presentation. So we want to pause before. We want to pause during. I have a tendency again to do things quickly, and I speak quickly, and I think that people can track with me, but that's not always the case. So I need to pause to make sure that the message is landed, and pause to make sure that I'm checking in with people. And if it's a big audience, I'm checking in by simply making eye contact with them. And then I want to pause after. I want to pause after to have time with the people. I want to make sure that I don't book myself on a flight out if I'm flying somewhere, or speak and leave. I really, really don't like that model. And that used to be me. I was anxious to get home. But if somebody has paid me a lot of money to come speak for their organization, I want to honor them after the presentation and make myself available. And then also for reflection on my own. How did it go? What do I need to change? Where did people laugh? Where did they have the aha moments, and so forth? So you want to pause whatever you're doing before, during, and after at those 3 points. And
I want to hold that for just a moment, because the image that comes to my mind, Tim, as you speak about this, is like when you pick up a book and you read it, there's chapter divisions, there's paragraphs, there's periods, there's the white space around the page, the margin, so to speak. And that's the image that comes to my mind when you're talking about taking these kind of pauses.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have an open book in front of me, and I never even thought about that before. But anyway, I have something I might share later on that I read that I'm sure you're familiar with.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So that's number one. Just pause before you're writing or any kind of a project.
Yeah.
Both before, during, and after. Right.
So those are the times to pause, and the types of pauses. I think obviously a mental pause is a very good pause. We ought to do that every day. A spiritual pause, we should also do that every day. And then a physical pause. I teach a process I call the 6x6 rule. I'm not sure if I mentioned that or not when we were together in Atlanta.
Yeah, you did. I thought it was really awesome.
And each of those 6 pauses, I think, fit neatly into that: mental, spiritual, and physical.
Gotcha.
And so if we're doing that as business owners, if we're doing that as couples, if we're doing that as family, we can fire on all cylinders. But when we don't do that, that's when the problems occur. And so I used early in my career the idea of a pie shape or a wheel. And if you think about the spokes of a wheel, like on a bicycle or motorcycle, and each of those pauses represent something that fits into the mental area. Are we reading? Are we listening? Are we learning? In the spiritual, are we taking time for self-renewal? Are we taking time for inspirational or religious reading or Bible study or whatever our angle is? And then the physical aspect, are we exercising? Are we eating well? Are we getting enough sleep? All of those are spokes on a wheel that if we have those things roughly in the right order, in the right sequence, we're going to be so much more effective in our marriages, so much more effective in our roles as parents, as a relationship with friends, and certainly as business owners as well.
I love that. I think of the pause too. I mean, for me personally, what I do is this deep breathing. I have done a lot of this probably over the last year and a half, more than I have ever, is have a regular meditation practice and doing, deep breathing. And I actually help my clients do this as well. And it does something. I think the pause is definitely involved in that, taking deep breaths and being tuned in to one's body. That's really cool. Anything that's on the top of your mind, Adele, as we talk about this?
Well, one thing that I have practiced, I think forever, is when I wake up, I will lay in bed truly for a 20-minute or more pause. And I just lay. I love to see the sun coming through the window. Tim gets up so early, he doesn't see the sun. I like to see the sun come through the window.
Yes.
And I think about my day. It's my time to do a devotion, and I kind of plan my day before my feet even hit the floor. And my day goes so much better when I allow that time, that pause to do that. On days, it's rare that I have to set an alarm, but on days that I set the alarm and I have to get out the door and I don't have that time to kind of mentally plan my day, it doesn't go as well. It really,
yeah. I mean, I know that there's some folks that are raising small children and busy moms, and they get up in the morning and they may not have had very much sleep the night before because their child woke up or whatever. They had one throwing up, but taking time, even if it's 5 minutes,
right.
Just taking deep breaths, light a candle if you can, but just take time and be with yourself. Even looking up at the sky, like looking up at the clouds. That's really cool. Yeah. Are there any other thoughts that you have? Like, what would be maybe closing thoughts that you have for those that are listening? Any closing thoughts that you just want folks to leave with?
One of my tenets of my 6x6 rule is to read 6 books related to your profession each year, and 6 books that have nothing to do with your profession. And I'm reading a book by Brene Brown called Dare to Lead right now. And I'm familiar with her work, as well as John Gottman's work. And I just read the other day a section where she was talking about Gottman and his ability to predict successful versus failing marriages due to 4 different criteria. Is a marriage absence of criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. And so since these are married couples,
I added the 5th horseman in there. Tim, FYI. One of my podcast episodes is about it. But a 5th one is isolation, I believe. But go ahead with I'm glad you're familiar with Gottman. He's good.
Well, that was a pregnant pause there to let that message land. But anyway, I think, isolation is a great fit for that. And think about that too in terms of your business as well. If you have any of those present when you're dealing with your clients or your customers, you're going to have difficulty. And so you can take that same content that Gottman talks about in marriages and apply that to your dealings with your coworkers, and certainly your spouse if you're in business together, and most importantly, the customers who pay your bills.
Absolutely. This is great. Thank you so much for being here. We've just gained a lot. I mean, the 3 reasons to pause, and just mentally, spiritually, and physically being involved in your life, allowing your spouse to be a mirror to you. That's great. How can folks get in touch with you?
Well, they can reach me at tim@timrichardson.com. I'm not active on all social, but I'm very active on LinkedIn. Also recently got into TikTok, LinkedIn, Tim Richardson, Knoxville, Tennessee. And I think I'm on Instagram as well. Somebody else does all that for me, but in a very tiny bit. I usually post the content on Facebook as well. So any of those places you can get in touch with me, and hopefully someday relationships with timandadele.com or something similar.
I think y'all are really ripe and ready for that. Honestly, I would love to support you. Tim and
thank you.
So keep up the great work you're doing, the great pauses, the great influence that you're making in other couples and in your audiences. And thanks so much. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. After taking a pause to reflect on our conversation, I for sure am more aware of the value of the pause. Here's some takeaways worthy of reflection. Number 1, I love that Tim and Adele show us the importance of celebrating significant dates beyond birthdays and anniversaries. Number 2, it's interesting how the effects of the pandemic brings attention to our need for pause on a regular basis. And then number 3, taking time for deep breaths and pauses before, during, and after our focused work helps us be more self-aware. What resonated with you? Be assured that I read every comment from those who share their takeaways by filling out the form on the website, betterrelationshipsbetterlife.com. And I would absolutely love to hear from you. And you can also go to the website to the red tab on every page that says Ask Judy. And I would be glad to bring on some guests of interest to you. So next week, we'll hear from Adam Niemer, who will share with us how to create psychological safety in the workplace. And in the meantime, please share, subscribe, rate, and comment in the streaming platform of your choice. See you next time on Better Relationships, Better Life.